Hey, what's up, guys? Welcome to the channel. Ever since his last fight at UFC 264, people have been asking who is Sean O'Malley going to fight next. There's so many options for him. He's supposedly going to finally break into the rankings and fight a ranked opponent. He's got a lot of hype around him. He's got a cult-like following. He's got a lot of haters, and people have been asking nonstop, what's next for Sean O'Malley? And I think we may finally have an answer. There's been some reports online. There's been some hints dropped on Sean O'Malley's YouTube channel, which I'll talk about in a minute. And I think we finally have an answer. I thought this was the most likely scenario of what the route that the UFC would take, but I wasn't 100% sure. But now we have some information about it. So first off, Sean O'Malley fought at UFC 264. He was originally supposed to fight Luis Smoka like a week before the fight, maybe 10 days. Luis Smoka pulled out of the fight. Then he was replaced with Chris Montigno, a guy who wasn't even on the UFC roster. We all know what happened in that fight. Chris Montigno is just so tough, but he got the break speed off of him in that fight. He got destroyed. There was a little bit of a weird third round stoppage, but at the end of the day, there's no controversy in my book. Sean O'Malley beat him. I didn't love the stoppage. It was a very weird stoppage, but at the end of the day, Sean O'Malley gets a win over a guy he was supposed to beat. So ever since then, it's been talked about who is he going to fight next. And there's so many options out there, whether, there's been talk of Cody Stamann, Marlon Vera rematch. A lot of people, ever since that first fight with Marlon Vera, where that leg injury came into effect and then Sean O'Malley was stretchered out of the cage, people have been fiending for that Sean O'Malley Marlon Vera rematch. And I thought there was a chance that might happen, but I didn't think that was the most likely scenario. There's some people who have suggested Jimmy Rivera, who's currently ranked number 13. There's been talk of Rafael Sunsel. There's been so much, different matchups thrown out there for Sean O'Malley. One matchup I know I said that was no way possible, Merab Davishvili. It was not going to happen. Just a terrible matchup for Sean O'Malley. That fight was not going to happen. Then there was also some talk about maybe Cody Garbrandt. There's been, some back and forth between Sean O'Malley and Cody Garbrandt. Cody Garbrandt's top ranked. He's just coming off a loss, a beating to Rob Font. And I think a lot of people wanted to see that fight, but Cody Garbrandt's going down to flyweight. He's fighting Kai Kara France in December, I believe. So that fight's off the table as well. So we can kind of, through process of elimination, we pretty much know who he's not fighting. And then also on Sean O'Malley's YouTube channel, so we can kind of, I'm also going to talk about when do I think Sean O'Malley's going to fight. But Sean O'Malley talked about on his YouTube channel, the UFC wanted him to fight in November on that MSG card, which would be UFC 268. But he kind of complained when he was talking about it on his YouTube channel. He complained about it. Apparently his coach has something going on that weekend. Also, he didn't want to pay the extra taxes that the state of New York imposes on these fighters, which I kind of agree with. If I was him, I'd be fighting in Las Vegas where there's the least amount of state taxes. So basically saying, he didn't want to fight in November, didn't want to fight on that card. He wanted to fight in Vegas. So I think, honestly, if we're talking about a timetable, I think we'll probably see Sean O'Malley fighting in December. But who knows? The UFC, the reason they probably wanted to put him on that MSG card is the same reason they gave him Chris Montigno at UFC 264. They want to give him exposure. And that UFC 268 card, even though it only has 2 or 3 fights announced, it's going to be a massive card. The UFC always puts on a massive card for MSG, and they want to put Sean O'Malley. They're trying to build him as a star. And I think that's why they want to keep him on that card. But at the end of the day, I think he's probably going to end up fighting in December, probably in Vegas, it seems like. I just think that's a perfect timetable for him to return. He already fought in early July, so December would be the right, time for him to return. So as far as opponent, the person I wanted to see him fight was Dominick Cruz. I just thought that matchup was super intriguing. I just love the stylistic matchup. Dominick Cruz is arguably the GOAT of the bantamweight division. And I would just love to see him fight Dominick Cruz. I think it would be super fun if Sean O'Malley, and I've been a guy who has not been impressed by Sean O'Malley. I don't think he has any real big quality wins yet. I just, you look at his resume and it's not very good. Right now he's on a 2-fight win streak over Thomas Almeida, but that's a shell of Thomas Almeida. And then just recently beaten Chris Montigno, and that guy wasn't even in the UFC as tough as he is and as much respect as I have for him. It's finally time for Sean O'Malley to fight somebody ranked. We can finally see if this guy that has so much hype behind him can actually put on a dominant performance. And the person that it's being reported and talked about that Sean O'Malley is going to fight next is the guy that I said, I did a video right after UFC 264, and I said, this is what I think the UFC is going to do. And that person is Frankie Edgar. Currently, Frankie Edgar is number 8 ranked in the bantamweight division, which is insane. He's coming off that brutal loss to Corey Sandhagen where he got flying knees, stiffened up, brutally KO'd. Before that, he had a win against Pedro Munoz, but I thought he lost that fight by decision. But for some reason, he got the decision in that fight. And I think you have 2 ways this can go. I think Frankie Edgar is the best opponent in the top 10 for Sean O'Malley to have the highest probability of beating. And that's what the UFC wants. They want him to beat him, put on a show, and then they can say, okay, he beat a ranked guy. He is the real deal. And I think Frankie Edgar, regardless how good he is, I think if you had to pick somebody out of the top 10, who can Sean O'Malley beat? It's probably Frankie Edgar. But I think it could go another route. We've seen this story before. Frankie Edgar, and somebody commented this and said this too, Frankie Edgar, Yair Rodriguez. Yair Rodriguez looked like an absolute killer at featherweight. They put him against Frankie Edgar, and look what Frankie Edgar did to him. Beat the brakes off of him. So I think you can go one of 2 ways. I don't know who I would favor right now off the top of my head. I'd probably go with Frankie, but that length might be trouble for him. Sean O'Malley's so long, so tall. But Frankie Edgar is just a proven guy. He's a veteran. He was lightweight champion, 2 weight classes above where he currently sits. And honestly, I think Frankie Edgar could probably go to flyweight. Honestly, he could probably make the weight. But I think that's what it's going to be. So I think Sean O'Malley versus Frankie Edgar in December. Let me know what you guys think of this matchup. Are you happy with this matchup? Would you prefer to see Sean O'Malley fight someone else? I'm curious what you guys think. Do me a favor, if you guys enjoy these videos, make sure to like the video. It helps support the channel, and I will see you in the next video.